Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars. Ridgely here with another Lessons from the CEO, and I'm delighted to be joined by a dear friend, we've been friends a long time at this point, who is the founder of the online community of copywriters worldwide, known as the Copy Posse, putting out some of the very best content on planet Earth. My good friend, Alex Cattoni. Alex, thanks so much for taking some time with us today.
I am so happy to be here, Ridgely. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Well, I know a little bit of your background, but those others, many who are listening, probably don't. So tell us, when did your entrepreneurial journey kick in? Were you always an entrepreneur? Did you go the corporate route for a while, then make the switch over? What's that look like?
Good question. I do think I've always been an entrepreneur, although that was a path that wasn't very clear to me, like many entrepreneurs when you're growing up. So why I say I think I've always been an entrepreneur is when I think back to my childhood, I mean, every weekend I would rope my cousin into some money-making scheme as an 11-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 7. I was obsessed with money. Which sounds funny to say, but I've always been obsessed with money, and not in the like greedy, I need more money sort of way, but it was always really fascinating to me how to make money, how money exchanged hands, why people would pay money for something. I think that was instilled in me at a young age by my parents. My mom is a professor, but my stepdad is an entrepreneur, and I learned really, really quickly that, I can do things and I can make money. And that oftentimes the only way I would get money is if I struck up some sort of a deal. I'll clean the house or I'll get good grades. I mean, everything was a deal when it came to money. I wasn't just given an allowance every week. I had to earn it. And then that kind of implanted in my brain this idea of money. I can make money. I can go do things. I can paint rocks with nail polish and sell them door to door, which I did. I could do performances in the cul-de-sac and sell tickets door to door. It was a lot of door to door to the exact same people that lived in the same cul-de-sac. I had a babysitters club. I had a detective agency. I had, good old fashioned lemonade stands in the summertime. I mean, I really was obsessed with making money. And then I got into high school and thought, well, that's not one of the jobs. I can't just make money as a job. I can't just sell stuff door to door as a job. I didn't really understand sales or entrepreneurship. And so my plan was to become a lawyer. So after high school, I went to university and got a business degree with a major in business law with the intention of going to law school. And thank God that didn't happen. I ended up leaving university and knew I wasn't quite ready for law school yet. So I put that on hold. I was studying for the LSAT. I was going through jumping through all the hoops, but I decided I was just going to go travel for a while, but had no money. There's the money word again. So I was like, I need to figure out a way to make money, but also travel. And that led me down a path of applying for internships overseas. And that's how I got hired at Mindvalley, which was, I would say, the start of my entrepreneurial journey as an adult.
It's so funny because being that guy who did go to law school, and if you really want to know why did I go to law school, it's because I could get money. They would give you money in the United States in the form of student loans so that I could go to law school at night, pursue my stuff during the daytime, ended up
Yeah.
getting that law degree and becoming a reformed lawyer, never going back to doing that ever again. So I'm totally with you 100%. So
Yeah.
pretty confident, ballsy, if you will, even to say, I'm going to take an internship in Kuala Lumpur. I mean,
Hmm.
where is that even? Some people
Oh,
would be,
yeah.
right? What was that like? I mean, it's a pretty bold move.
I know. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, where did that come from? Because I was actually pretty shy and introverted, but I think I've always really sought out adventure. And I think that that's such a incredible success principle that, as entrepreneurs, it's a learned skill to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't think people naturally are like, I want to be uncomfortable or I want to step outside my comfort zone. But, and I'm also not going to say that it was an entirely easy decision, but what I didn't say was actually the last year of my university degree, I I really didn't like I really didn't like university, to be honest. I think I felt stifled. I felt like I think I was actually like miserable in advance of knowing like this is going to be the rest of my life. Like just working really hard to be a lawyer, like what's happening here. So I decided to take my last year of my degree and go study abroad in Vienna, Austria, which was an incredible experience. And the first day I flew to Austria, my bags didn't arrive, and I went to my dormitory, and my German was not that great, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I remember being like, I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I want to go home. Like I just was so upset. But that ended up being, the best 8 months of my life. Really, I made friends. I explored, and this was before cell phones. This was like, Mom, I'm moving to Vienna, Austria. I'll call you when I can. I'll go to an internet cafe and send you a check-in. And so when it came time for me to get the internship or apply for the internship, I had already spent quite a bit of time living overseas. And so that definitely supported my decision to want to travel again and go back to living somewhere else. Although this time moving to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Muslim country, I speak a little bit of German, a little bit of Italian, a little bit of Spanish. Definitely do not speak Bahasa Malaysia or any Asian languages. And so it was a big decision to move there. I was 23 and left everything behind. I sold my car, packed up my bags, thinking I was going for a 6-month internship, but I stayed for 3.5 years.
Yeah, wow. Now, what a great story in that you went and you happened to hook up with Vishan, who's like ridiculous as an entrepreneur. So you went from a comfortable background into the world of entrepreneurship, knowing that you already were an entrepreneur. I do want to know about the detective agency, though. The detective agency at what age? That we just can't let that slide by for a second. You got to tell me about the detective agency here
Yeah.
before I forget.
You want me to talk about it now?
Yeah, why not?
So I honestly think this is where my love for true crime came in, which is just another like secret hidden passion of mine. Which I know I'm not alone in saying that. Like there's something about the true crime world that I find so fascinating. But so my grandmother, my Nonna, she's from Italy. She had this gorgeous garden, and someone in the neighborhood was taking the heads off of her roses. Like they were walking past her garden, and someone was killing her beautiful red roses. And I remember she was so upset about it. So my cousin and I always say my cousin and I, because my cousin's a year younger than me. And I was just like, we're doing this. And she was like, okay, like still to this day, she's just the best. And we went and we sat up in a tree, of course, very seriously, because we were now a detective agency. And we were going to solve the crime of who was taking the heads off of my Nonna's flowers. And we sat in that tree for hours. And what's kind of funny is we never did find out who was ruining my Nonna's garden. But while we were up in the tree, we did happen to witness, I don't know if you don't call them this in the States, I'm sure, but a dickety D, which is a ice cream boy. Basically, it's a very Canadian thing where in the summertime, usually young boys, like, teenage boys would get jobs, kind of like you'd get a job as like a paper boy or some sort of summer job, but they were called Dickety D's, and they were these bicycles that had coolers on the front of them, and they would go around selling ice cream. So they would play music just like an ice cream truck, and they would just drive around on their bikes, and they would sell ice cream, popsicles, things like that to kids. Well, we happened to watch this Dickety D boy get held up at knife point and robbed. And we witnessed the whole thing. And so we called 911, and the police came, and we had to give the police the information. And I don't know if they ever caught the guy, but we were probably 8 or 9 years old. They took us very seriously, which felt good. As an 8 or 9-year-old, I'm sure they were thinking, oh my God, these kids. But, in our mind, we were like, wow, we really helped solve crime. And then we decided we were going to have a detective agency. And I think that was short-lived. I think it maybe was a 1 month out of a summer, one time kind of thing. But it was like, I remember making flyers and putting them around the neighborhood and being like, we will be your PIs. Like, this is how much it costs. Like, yeah.
I just love that. I think it's awesome. And taking out the Dickety Dee crime guy. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Amazing. All right. So we're going back to Malaysia now.
Mhm.
And so you came into Mindvalley, obviously very successful operation that has helped a lot of people get to the next level. What was that like at the beginning? Where did you start? What happened?
Yeah, good question. I mean, like you said earlier, I so respect Vision and everything that he's created at Mindvalley. And I'll be honest, when I first applied for the job, I had no freaking idea who they were, what they did. I didn't even know what internet marketing was. But they had a really great website I'll never forget it. On their jobs page, it said, we help, like, what was it? Natural born geniuses achieve their potential or something like that. I remember being like, well, I'm not a genius, but maybe they'll hire me. And I went through the application process. I had a couple interviews. And what I found out later was they hadn't logged into the job inbox in months. And then someone, they were looking to hire someone and they were like, well, go to the jobs inbox and see if we have any applications. And mine was at the top. And so it felt very serendipitous that I somehow was the first email they saw, and I was from Canada. And they needed a native English speaker, if I remember correctly, because they wanted someone to take over the support inboxes, and they were like, we want someone who speaks and writes in perfect English. And so I got the interview, and I remember not feeling very confident about the interviews. I remember interviewing with a girl named Kathleen, I think her name was, that was on the team. And then with Vision, and then those two interviews went well. And then I had the third interview with the old co-founder of Mindvalley. His name was Mike, and he terrified me. He was German, and he was just like, nope. Like I left that interview being like, absolutely not. I don't have the job. But then I ended up getting the job. And I remember Vision said to me, I just saw something in you, and I know you didn't have any qualifications or any skills. I mean, you were a 23-year-old right out of college, but I had a good feeling, and we decided to hire you. And I mean, I did it all. I like I said, I answered customer support emails for the first little while that I was there. Then that changed, and I was doing more blog management, and then that turned into project management, and then business management. And then I was the creative director by the time I left. So it was a steep growth path, but I loved it. It was this like, oh my God, people make money online doing marketing. Like, my definition of marketing before that was, the Mad Men era type of ad executives who come up with Super Bowl ads. Like, I didn't understand that there were businesses that were selling stuff online and selling information online, and that was a business model. And that, I mean, getting into personal development, internet marketing, all of it at the same time was like, I drank the Kool-Aid hard.
Well, and what an incredible background that gave you the foundation, doing all the stuff that now the people that work for you have to do, but you were there. So nobody can BS you. Nobody can tell you what you cannot do, et cetera. You've done it all from the very bottom all the way up to the top. And then, so what propelled you ultimately to say, hey, thank you very much, Mindvalley team. Appreciate everything. I'm out. Got to do my own thing.
Yeah. Oof, that was a big decision because, I was 25. I was the creative director of a multi-million-dollar company. I was managing a team of people. I was surrounded by like-minded entrepreneurs, every single day. I was traveling the world. I was going to Bali and Cambodia and Vietnam and China. And I mean, I was at the top of my game, living my best life, but I got really sick. So there was a time in around 2010 that I started getting just really ill, couldn't figure out what was going on with me. Went and saw doctors in Malaysia. They prescribed me things, but I didn't really know, what was going on. But I was very, very sick. And I was also really missing home. I think a lot of times those two things go hand in hand. Everything hunky-dory when you're healthy. And then I started getting quite ill and just really missed my mom, and one Christmas I went home. It was in 2010. I went home, and my mom is and a professor, and so in the healthcare field. And my twin brother, was a med student at the time, and so I have a lot of family in healthcare. And they took one look at me, and they were like, "Something is really wrong with you. Like, you're very sick." I had lost a ton of weight. I was like, my skin was basically see-through. I was just really ill. And so I went through a series of tests and found out that I was celiac and couldn't have gluten. And that was an enlightening experience. And it was also really difficult because living in Asia, where there's, soy sauce and everything, and gluten was not well known. I think it was just starting to become more of a thing in, California and Western Canada. And, even in other places in North America, it was like, gluten, what's that? This was back, 14 years ago. And so I had to make the tough decision that it was time for me to leave. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, I acted, confident in my decision, but I was leaving behind this world that I had been so absorbed in for the last almost 4 years to move back to Canada just because I needed to be able to eat the food that I could eat and be close to family. And I moved to Vancouver. And, I lived in a friend's spare bedroom, slept on an air mattress from Walmart. And I went from being surrounded by 50 plus incredible humans every single day to being totally alone. And there were many days that I seriously questioned if I had just completely ruined my entire career and if I made the biggest mistake of my life.
Wow, amazing. Well, you know what? I think that sometimes there are those decisions and you don't see exactly why celiac and no gluten leads to this over here, but you look back in retrospect and you say, I kind of had to go through that tough time too to make it to the next level. By the way, I'm also very completely gluten-free myself. And so I get that. My comment to my family members who feel otherwise is, if you knew what I knew about gluten, you would never put it in your body again. That's all. I'll leave it at that. And then they're like, yeah, well, I really like
That's
sourdough.
another
I like
podcast
this bread.
episode. Yeah.
I know for sure, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're in Canada, you're by yourself, and you decided, wait a second, I've got this skill set, I can write stuff.
Yeah.
How'd that work out? How'd that go? I mean, what was that like at the beginning? Because obviously now it's turned into a multi-million-dollar international business all over the world, kicking butt, taking names. But there was that day of, I really think I might do better than a inflatable mattress from Walmart. What am I going to do there? Right?
Yeah. So what's kind of cool and what a lot of people don't realize is that I didn't start as a copywriter by the traditional sense. So as I mentioned at Mindvalley, I kind of did everything but copywriting officially. I definitely did some copywriting at Mindvalley because as the creative director, I would end up editing a lot of copy, or if something needed to be written and the copy team was busy, I would be like, well, I can just whip it up. Like, it's fine, but I'm not a copywriter. And then when I moved back to Canada, I knew that I wanted to, I needed to start making money, but obviously getting a job after the life that I had just had felt like, oh, I don't know, is that really what I want? I got offered many jobs. I mean, our mutual friend, Glenn, he tried real hard to hire me after I left Mindvalley. And I was like, no, I'm really going to give this entrepreneurship thing a go, And so I started working with clients, freelancing, basically doing marketing, but all things marketing. I mean, in the beginning, it was like, you need me to edit that video sales letter for you? No problem. Like, I was just a Jill of all trades. Like, you need help in the marketing department, from execution to strategy to building funnels to building pages. I mean, this was before tools like Groove existed, right? Like, everything was hard. But I had a lot of skills in that department. And so I sort of became this little marketing Swiss Army knife for a lot of clients that I worked with. And it was only after a couple of years where, again, they would always ask me like, okay, we love this funnel. We love this strategy. This launch plan looks really good, but do you know anybody who can actually write it? And I was like, well, I don't really know that many copywriters, but like, I could try it. I knew a couple copywriters at the time, but a lot of them were these big name guys who were charging $10K for a sales page. And I knew my clients didn't have that budget. So I was like, well, I'll just give it a go. And turned out I was actually pretty good at it. And it took me a long time to really own the fact that I was a copywriter, even though I had been doing it unofficially. And I hear that from so many of my students. They're like, I've been a copywriter for 3 years, writing emails for my company. And I didn't even know that that's what I was doing, And so really owning that took a few years after I started, but that then became really what I was known for, predominantly in the personal development world. So working with clients, helping them strategize and monetize their email lists with, email campaigns and offers and sales pages and video sales letters and things like that. So that's what I did from 2011 when I left Mindvalley to 2019 exclusively. That was just all I did. And it was great. Traveled the world. I made good money, but was completely behind the scenes. I mean, well, you knew me back then. I had a, personal Instagram account that I would use to connect with friends. And that was that. I had no brand or no online following at all.
And so it's very interesting because that's an example of what a solopreneur can do. You can be
Yeah.
that person that's behind the scenes, but it's very different than running a multi-million-dollar company. So
Mm-hmm.
how was that transition for you from, I think I can make this a lot bigger and serve more people? That's not an easy transition. It's a lot easier to, hey, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to write my stuff. I'm going to take another trip to Paris. I mean,
Yeah.
that's relatively easy to do.
I kind of miss it. I kind of miss that. Yeah, building a business, going from freelancer to founder is it is a roller coaster ride. And I think a lot of freelancers, whether you're a copywriter, marketing consultant, strategist, web designer, web developer, video editor, there's so many incredible freelancing skills out there. Um, I often, now I look back and I'm like, man, I sometimes miss the freedom of that, like where I had a handful of really great clients who trusted me completely, paid me really well. I had maybe 2 meetings, 3 meetings a week. The rest of the time I was in Italy mostly. And that was my lifestyle and it was amazing. But, in 2019, it had started earlier than 2019. I would say probably around 2017, 18. I really started to feel like, I know I'm hiding. I know I meant to do more. Like, I can't explain it. And if anyone listening to this, I'm sure you can think back in times in your life where it was like, it started as a whisper, then it got louder. And I would have these visions of myself speaking on stage to huge rooms of people. And it would hit me in this really weird way because I'm like, is that just ego? Is that like because I've just seen so many of my friends speak on stage that I think that's what I want? What is this? But I just knew that I was meant to step into the spotlight, and it terrified me because I had basically been hiding behind the scenes for a decade or almost a decade. And other than, Flight Club and that kind of thing, but that was with a small group of safe people who I knew and were my friends, and I could run this mastermind with Glenn, and that was great. But I think that I just had this calling to just start sharing more of my story. I think a lot of people who I met on my path in business would always ask me, how did you get started writing? Or they would ask me about my philosophy on copy. And, I think going back to how I was so afraid to call myself a copywriter, that was partially because if you typed copywriting into Google or YouTube, you weren't seeing women showing up. It was like very much dominated by men, white older men predominantly. And I looked up to a lot of these guys as like legends in the industry. We're talking like, oh my God, like these guys are the OGs. Like they were back doing print ads in, the 60s and stuff. Like what? And so I felt like really a huge imposter syndrome calling myself a copywriter, which is so crazy because it's not like you have to get a degree or anything to call yourself a copywriter. You just have to write copy. But putting myself out there and just sharing my philosophy on marketing and, because that's the other benefit of being behind the scenes for as long as I was, is I got to see a lot of what worked and I got to see a lot of what didn't. And I got to see a lot of what I consider to be great marketing and what I consider to be douchey marketing. And I finally was like, I got something to say about this. So I started my YouTube channel in 2019, really had no strategy. I think oftentimes people think when they see other people kind of start businesses and become successful, they think, oh, they must have been crystal clear on exactly what they were doing from day one. But that was not the case at all. For me, it was, I have something to say about this and I'm just going to start a YouTube channel and talk about it. And then I'm just going to see what happens. And my plan was to do 4 videos. And then I'll see what happens. And that's really how it how it started was I'm just going to talk about this and see what happens. And I didn't get a ton of traction in those first 4 videos, but I realized I really liked it and I enjoyed talking about it. And even if I was only getting a comment here or a comment there, I felt like what I was saying was actually resonating with people. And that's what kept me going, because it took me 6 months to reach 1,000 subscribers. It did not happen overnight.
Yeah, it's never easy. And sometimes it takes a lot longer than you
Yep.
think, costs
Hmm.
more personally, costs more financially, costs more in every kind of way. And from there, it began to grow. And then what was it like? If you take it back to the early days, what was it like when you realized, man, I got to hire some people?
Yeah. As they say, like new level, new devil, in the beginning, I was worried about talking on video. And then it was like, well, if I want to take this to the next level, because keep in mind, I was still working with clients this whole time as well. I didn't I didn't really let go of my last client until 2022. And when I say client, I mean like actual, like where I was on retainer working with them every single month. I'll still do occasional projects and things like that. But really, it took me, two almost 3 years to fully kind of be like, well, I don't know if this is really going to turn into anything. And I don't really want to let go of these people that are paying me money every single month. So I'm just going to keep doing that. But I remember, yeah, that decision to start hiring, and it's so scary. Your first hire, and like, I don't mean like hiring a VA where you're getting their help with a couple of things. I mean like your first real hire where you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars a month on a person when you barely can when there's barely anything left over at that point. It's like, it's making that decision to be like, no, I know that if I can get help here, I'll be able to take on more, do more, and make that work. But I think every decision like that, where it's that new level of growth, is scary.
For sure it is. And I would submit to you that those people who don't retain an element of that fear as they grow get themselves in really big trouble, because paying attention to the numbers matters.
Mhm.
And how many people have we known over the years that stopped paying attention to the numbers, and then what happened to them? Not so great.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking back on that, what would you say are a couple of the top characteristics of a successful entrepreneur from what you experienced?
Hmm. Oh man, I think there's a few things. I think the first is kind of what I was hinting at earlier, where you're never 100% clear or confident in your decisions, and that's okay. Like, something that a mentor of mine taught me was courage comes before confidence. I think we all have this completely backwards way of thinking where we look at other people and they seem to be confident in what they're doing. And so we think in order to be successful or to even start down that path, I have to wait till I feel confident, or I have to wait till I feel ready. But ready is not a feeling, it's a decision. And I think, and then confidence comes from gaining experience after those decisions. So I think that's a big one, is knowing that there's no perfect moment in time where, when X happens, then I can do it. The other thing is, I think the best entrepreneurs and the most successful entrepreneurs don't necessarily make the make the best decisions 100% of the time, but they make decisions fast and pivot just as fast. It's this idea of like, you could waffle, waffle, waffle all day long and then never make a decision because you're not 100% sure if it's the right decision. But to stop wasting time and making decisions quickly, even if it's the wrong decision, you'll end up farther along the path because you'll learn even quicker and how you can do things differently. And so it's kind of this idea of like messy imperfect action, and knowing that there's no such thing as doing it right.
Yeah,
Um
I remember that quote. I can't remember who said it, that poor entrepreneurs make decisions slowly and change their mind quickly. Smart entrepreneurs make decisions quickly and change their mind slowly
mm,
unless needed. I found that to be true also. So tell me about, I always like loving asking this question, which is, give us some error, some setback that you've been through in the last few years as an entrepreneur and what you took away from it?
Mm. I think as much as I always try to create what my audience needs most, there have been a couple of times where I've done something or created something because I wanted to do it. And while I do really think that it's important to make sure you're doing things that you want to do, I've made some errors when it comes to really like offer product fit or going in too many different directions at once just because I wanted to, rather than focusing. Like, I'm trying to think of a great example. I mean, one example was, I have a higher level membership program called Rain in the Copy Posse, and I always knew what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be an exclusive group of copywriters and freelancers who really want to level up. Um, and that's what it was in the beginning. And then it kind of transitioned into something else because I felt like, taking advice from other people, like, oh, you need to scale your membership. You need to take it to the next level, open it up to more people. And I did that. And I changed the offer and I changed the pricing model. And it sucked all the joy out of it for me. And I also realized that I was no longer serving my customers in the best possible way. And I think sometimes these lessons are like hard to learn because, there's this part of you that wishes you would have figured it out sooner before you did this whole public thing that everybody saw and like letting people down. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't, but that's how I feel. And then realizing that like everyone makes mistakes and being able to show up in front of my mastermind group and say, well, we tried something different. It didn't work. And now I'm going to try it this way. And I think the old me would have been so hard on myself for not getting it right the first time and being kind of embarrassed because it's like, I want to act like I have it all together and like I know what I'm doing, but 99% of the time I really do feel like I'm guessing. And then I remind myself that that's what marketing is. It's making experienced guesses that you think are going to work and they might not, and that's okay,
Yeah, 100%. So what about the value? Tell us about the value to you of ongoing personal development, ongoing professional development. I mean, you dove into that world in a huge way by moving to Kuala Lumpur. What's it meant since then? And maybe even touch on the power of mentorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's kind of funny is I almost took a hard left from personal development for a while because in the first few years of my career, I was, like I said, I was drinking the Kool-Aid so hard. And we're not talking just like, you know, go into a Tony Robbins event. I mean, I did that, but it was like, I was obsessed. I was reading every personal development book. I was studying all of the like quote unquote gurus and then I kind of got a little bit jaded because, they always say like, never meet your heroes. I think sometimes I would meet my heroes and be like, huh? What? Realizing not everyone is exactly who they say they are. That's kind of crazy. And when I left Mindvalley, it was almost like coming out of, and I say this as a joke, but it was almost like coming out of a cult where it's like for 3.5 years, I was just with the same people all the time, learning personal development, doing all the different modalities of personal development from like EFT tapping to meditation to visualization to, astral projection. I never did really figure that one out, but all of these things. And then when I left, I'm like, maybe I need to take a break for a while. And I did. And I remember I used to get like triggered by, like motivational quotes and stuff. Cause I'd be like, oh God, like I really did get jaded by it all, if I'm being honest. But then, starting my business, all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a second. Personal development is so critical, as is mentorship. And your business will only grow as much as you do. And I joke with my students a lot when I go, ha, joke's on you. You thought you were just joining my program to learn copywriting skills, but like you didn't realize you were going to now question everything. And like, and your whole personal development journey is only just getting started because those two things are so closely tied. And the thing I love the most about my business, but also hate the most, is it is such a mirror for my own growth and my own blind spots and all the icky stuff. But it's beautiful to witness and go, wow, that's how I show up. And that's what I want to work on. And I want to break past those boundaries, and I want to take my business to the next level. And I know that in order to do that, I have to take care of myself and really focus on my mindset and how I'm showing up. And so that's a huge part of it. Mentorship, of course, is absolutely everything. I think so many people try to lone wolf it, and that, I mean, we're not meant to try to figure things out all on our own. Yet I think entrepreneurs naturally are more independent type of people. Like, we don't fit into the employee mentality. We don't oftentimes we're anti-authority, and like we want to do things our way. And so that can sometimes work in reverse of seeking mentorship. And so it's kind of realizing that, like, you can be independent but still know that there's people who are 5, 10, 20 steps down the path who can say, hey, this is actually the best way to go. You should come this way. And so as soon as I started investing in mentors and communities and masterminds, I mean, that's really when my business took off.
Yeah, I love to hear that. That's fantastic. So obviously super hot these days, AI.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on AI? How's it changing the world of business, the world of copywriting, the world of marketing, the world that you're in? What do you think? Where
Yeah.
are we going with it all?
I mean, I love it. It's changing everything. And I think so here's the thing. There's three different ways that you can look at AI. The first way to look at it is to be terrified of it and to think we're all screwed. We're all going to lose our jobs, universal basic income. I mean, I get it, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you go, it can be pretty doom and gloom. But like, if that's how you're going to decide to like live your life, I mean, you're already kind of done for anyway, if that's the way that you literally live your life. Or you can be super indifferent to it, put your head in the sand, ignore it, pretend it's not there, which obviously that's only going to work for so long. So my philosophy, the third way, I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's the right way, is to be optimistic about it and to look at ways that we can leverage it to do our jobs better. I think that I think it's incredible. I think it's absolutely changing marketing and business and copywriting. But I also don't think it's changing it in the way that it means copywriting is going to be obsolete, because we still need people to operate AI. We still need people to know what is good copy in order to know how, where, when to use it. We still need people to make educated marketing decisions and have critical thinking skills and strategy and know how to communicate with empathy. And I mean, that's all the stuff that I teach at the Copy Posse. And so I think for me, it's absolutely changing the game, but it's just changing the way in which the act of copywriting is done. It's no longer about sitting and staring at a blank page and going, oh my God, I need to have this download of something super genius that just like comes to me and then I have to write something. Now we have the best shortcut and starting point to then combine that with what we know about our audiences, what we know about what they care about, what we know about how they want to be communicated with. How do we then infuse that with empathy and humanness to make ourselves even more valuable as brands and businesses? Because I mean, this is just like economics, but as AI becomes more and more prevalent everywhere, there's now a rising premium on human made and human touch and human interaction. And so I actually see it as a huge opportunity to be like, yeah, let's ride that wave, but let's also not forget that now, just by us being human, we're more valuable because we're less common than where AI is going to be, entering the business world. So I choose to look at it in a very positive way and know that, empathy ultimately is what people need in order to feel safe and make buying decisions. And AI still, can't yet replicate that level of humanness. And I think it's important to double down on that.
I am with you. Totally 100% agree. No putting your head in the sand, no being scared. Forget that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this question. If you could go back to the Alex of 15 to 20 years ago and have a conversation, what would you want to share with her? And the answer, oh, everything's worked out like it's supposed to, that one does not count. Can't do that one. What would you want to share with younger Alex?
Oh man. I think I would tell her to listen listen to that little voice inside sooner. And to trust it, and just remind her that her voice and her message matters, and that she should go for it and really own her brilliance sooner. I think I hid for a long time, and I know I'm not the only one. Um, I look back and I'm like, man, I would allow my brilliance to shine in small, safe little groups, And the second it came to like really letting people see me, it was terrifying. So I think I would have said, start sooner, like stop hiding.
I will tell you that that is the most common answer I get to all
Really?
that question. That it's either start sooner or go faster. And I'm not so sure that's easy. I think we have to go through that process of everybody's doing the best they can under the circumstances. And,
Yeah.
while it may seem like I should have started sooner, or I should have ran a little harder, or I should have gone a little, I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
That human
For me,
thing is
I mean,
big.
it's funny because for me, it's not about going faster. Like once I started, it was like I was a freight train. Like nothing could have stopped me, and I've been almost running too fast, to be honest. Now I'd say the opposite. Now I'd say, Alex, slow down, just relax, rest. But I think it's more about the start, and even the starting sooner thing. It's like to me, it was more of I knew I was hiding. And
Mm.
I tried to convince myself that it was actually what I wanted, when in reality, it was just that I was so afraid to start.
Yep. I get it. Awesome. All right. Before we close out here, 3 books, 3 resources that you would recommend to the budding entrepreneurs, whether they're budding in years or budding in experience, that helped you, that served you. What would those 3 be?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question.
I know, right?
I mean, I'll just think of the books that really kind of stood out for me over the course of my career. I think one was The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I know that's like an oldie, but that was the book that inspired me to not go down the traditional career path and not just go to law school. That one book. There's another book that I think really helped me get out of my own way when it came to fear of the unknown and kind of perfectionism. Chris Prentice, I think it was, Zen and the Art of Happiness. That book really is all about this kind of philosophical belief that everything that happens to you is actually the best thing that could happen to you, even if it doesn't feel like it's the best in any moment. And so really letting go of this expectation that everything has to be great all the time, because what if even the bad things are happening to you? And then another one, I have to just say probably Robert Cialdini influence from a marketing perspective. That book taught me that I love marketing, but not from like a, digital marketing funnel type of perspective, but from like a human psychology, what makes people tick and click and buy and all of that. That book was a game changer for me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. As we're wrapping, final words to the young entrepreneurs out there. Alex, what would you want to share with them?
I guess I'll just give you the same advice that I'd give my past self, and it's stop hiding. Just stop hiding.
Thank you very much, Alex Cattoni, the founder of the Copy Posse, helping copywriters help other people. So the ripple effect of what you do is amazing. And I deeply appreciate the time and sharing all of your insights. Lots of love to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rich. Bye.